plan to be your one-stop shop for action movies, comic book movies, and the occasional horror movie reviews and rankings. And today's video is kind of all three. And this is my second time doing an underappreciated movie review. It's a series that I plan to do at least once a month. This month, there might be three because there is one I want to do on Saturday if I'm able to get it out. But today we have Blade 2 from 2002, directed by Guillermo del Toro, the horror legend, who later went on to do a couple other comic book adaptations, that being Hellboy and Hellboy 2. But today we're talking about Blade 2, and I feel like I've said 2 too many times. But anyway, let's get into this. First, let's talk about the action. The action in this movie is phenomenal. It's top-notch, whether it's the swordplay, the hand-to-hand combat. It's awesome. This is one of the reasons you watch this movie. And couple of the standouts for me are when they're in Blade's lair in front of the lights. I love that fight scene, the swordplay especially. And then when you get towards the end, when he rises out of the pool of blood, just that fight scene that follows that is one of the most memorable fight scenes for me. I just absolutely love it. And then the way it ends, so that scene ends, is just awesome. But I mean, you could probably pick any of the fight scenes, action scenes in this movie and call them standouts because there's just so many great ones in this movie. And so there's not much to discuss since they're just all awesome. And so let's just move on to the acting. You know, you get a lot of people that talk about like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, RDJ as Tony Stark and Iron Man as these perfect superhero castings. But personally, I think Wesley Snipes as Blade easily deserves to be in that same conversation. He just fits the role so perfectly. He has great chemistry with everyone on set in this movie and in the first movie. You know, and one of the standouts is also Chris Christopherson. The dynamic between Blade and Whistler is just great. And then I'm also a big fan of the dynamic between Ron Perlman and Wesley Snipes. I think it provides some of the greatest moments and most memorable quotes when those two are at it in this movie. And then one of the things that does kind of hold the first one back for me, where this one I think does a much better job, is the villains. Don't get me wrong, I am a fan of the first one as well, and I do like Steven Dorff. But I think that Reinhardt, Damascus, if I pronounced that right, I'm not sure, and even Nomak, I find them much more compelling. And then you also got some just great action genre actors thrown in there, like Donnie Yen, and I'll even throw in Matt Schultz, who appears in a few of these early aughts action movies, most notably The Fast and the Furious. Moving on to the visuals, I think the cinematography is pretty great in this movie, but the visuals overall is an aspect that I think holds it back a little bit. And a lot of that's because some of the fight scenes, for as great as they are, they do utilize CGI stunt doubles, as I'll call them, which I'm not a big fan of. You get like these sequences with a CGI Wesley Snipes, and you get kind of these bodies moving somewhat unnaturally, and the CGI hasn't aged the best either. And so that is an aspect that isn't particularly the best in this movie. But like I said, it's still very enjoyable and fun, even with those aspects thrown in there. And moving on to the story and the writing, I think this movie has a great concept for a sequel by just having Blade team up with the vampires for most of the movie, And even though I think the vampires turning on him is a pretty predictable thing, you pretty much know it's going to happen by the end. It does have a couple twists in that do work for me. Most notably, the Scud twist does work for me. Part of that's also due because it leads up to one of my favorite moments in the movie. I've been on you since day one, and two, it's not a dud. And I think this movie does a great job building and developing Nissa as a character, her relationship with her father, the leader of the vampires, and her relationship with Blade. It leads to some great moments towards the end. And then just quickly, you gotta mention the dialogue in this movie. There's just so many great one-liners and memorable quotes for this movie. And lastly, moving on to the sound. The score and soundtrack are pretty good, but one thing that stands out for me about this movie is the sound design in general. I love how it uses silence to build tension and doesn't necessarily rely on music for stuff like that. And it also transitions between silence, music, gunshots, bangs, and all of that. It just transitions between those sounds so flawlessly. So overall, I think Blade 2 is a superior sequel to 1998's Blade. I think it has some great action scenes, some great characters and acting, some awesome one-liners and memorable quotes, as well as just a great sound design. But I do think some of the dated CGI and effects do hold it back just a teeny bit. But I still think Blade 2 is a forgotten Marvel classic deserving of a 4.5. Thanks for watching this video. If you love Blade 2, or even if you hate it, I would love to hear your thoughts and arguments in the comments down below. And go ahead and smash that thumbs up button if you've enjoyed this video, if you've enjoyed me, and if you want to see more of these underappreciated movie reviews. And maybe smash that subscribe button as well if you want a one-stop shop for action movies, comic book movies, and the occasional horror movie reviews and rankings. And I will return next time when I see you again.